Have you ever scrolled through someone's Instagram feed and thought, wow, they really have it all? The perfect smile. The luxurious vacations. The spotless apartment, fresh flowers always in bloom, and lattes that seem too perfectly foamed to be real. A life wrapped in gold-filtered perfection. But what if I told you, it was all a lie? What if behind the curated selfies and travel photos, behind the designer bags and sparkling champagne glasses, there was something much darker, something broken, desperate, and spiraling? Tonight, we unravel the haunting story of Cassandra Hartwell, a woman who built a picture-perfect life online, crafted every pixel to dazzle, every caption to inspire envy. But the truth? The truth was suffocating. And in her desperate attempt to maintain the illusion, Cassandra crossed a line, one that would eventually cost her everything. This is not just a story about social media. This is a story about pressure. About pretending. About how far someone will go to be seen, loved, envied. How far someone can fall when the mask becomes too heavy to hold. It's about obsession. About lies so layered they become a lifestyle. And about the people who get caught in the crossfire of someone else's fantasy. By the end of this story, someone will be dead. But that's not how it begins. It begins with a young woman, hungry for more than her small-town life could offer. With a camera phone, a few filters, and a big dream. Cassandra started building a new reality, one Instagram post at a time. To her thousands of followers, she was the embodiment of success. A glamorous influencer in her mid-20s, living in downtown Los Angeles, wearing high-end fashion, dating a mysterious millionaire, jetting off to Bali and Santorini like it was routine. She gave advice on beauty. She spoke about wellness. Her stories were full of laughter and sunshine. But none of it, not one bit of it, was real. There was no downtown loft. No millionaire boyfriend. No luxury vacations. Cassandra was living in a rented room on the outskirts of Pasadena, struggling to pay rent, working part-time jobs, and photoshopping herself into someone else's reality. And the people around her? They had no idea how deep her deception ran. Not until it was too late. Because when reality and fantasy collide, someone always gets hurt. We're diving deep into Cassandra's life, the lies she built, the truth she buried, and the shocking, irreversible tragedy that followed. We'll hear from friends who thought they knew her. Ex-boyfriends. Landlords. Victims. And finally, the police investigators who unraveled it all. It's a tale of borrowed glamour masking growing desperation. Of a woman who wanted everything, and lost it all. Stay with me, as we step behind the screen, and uncover what really happened when Cassandra Hartwell's fake life came crashing down. To understand Cassandra Hartwell, you have to go back to where it all began. Before the posts. Before the filters. Before the facade. Back to the small town of Ashbury, Illinois, a place that barely registered on most maps. One main street, a single high school, and a population that could all fit into a modest football stadium. It was the kind of town where everyone knew everyone, and everyone knew Cassandra. From a young age, Cassandra stood out. Not for her talents, she wasn't particularly athletic, or book-smart, but for her presence. Even in high school, she had an aura about her. She was magnetic. Captivating. Some called her a chameleon. She could fit into any group, any crowd. But deep down, Cassandra was always watching, always studying. And most importantly, always wanting more. Her family life was far from perfect. Her father, Roger Hartwell, was a mechanic. Gruff. Hard-working. The kind of man who believed emotions were weaknesses and success was measured in overtime hours and dirty hands. Her mother, Linda, was quiet. Submissive. A former beauty queen turned grocery store clerk, long faded from her glamorous youth, barely holding herself together after years of emotional neglect. Cassandra's only sibling, Trevor, her older brother, had left home at 18 and never looked back. Rumor had it he joined the military just to escape their father's wrath. And Cassandra? She stayed behind, but she hated every minute of it. She dreamt of city lights. Of fame. Of a life where people knew her name. By 16, she was already experimenting with creating identities online. Fake MySpace profiles. Mood boards. A private Tumblr where she pretended to be a college student in New York. She downloaded photos of models and influencers and crafted stories around them. It wasn't just about pretending, it was about feeling seen. When she finally graduated high school, she didn't attend college. Instead, she bought a one-way bus ticket to Los Angeles, telling her parents she had a job lined up and a roommate waiting. Neither was true. She arrived in LA with $643, a suitcase of mostly thrifted clothes, and a dream so big it refused to be crushed by reality. And reality hit hard. Cassandra slept on couches. She worked as a hostess in mid-tier restaurants. She lied about being a student at UCLA to meet people. And she started what would become her greatest obsession, building her life online. At first, it was innocent enough, posting selfies, mimicking other influencers, copying poses and hashtags. But the numbers, the likes, the followers, they became addictive. Every ping of approval was like a hit of dopamine. Every comment, "You're gorgeous, wish I had your life, queen energy," was a temporary balm for the emptiness she felt inside. If this story moved you, if it made you pause and think about the world behind the filters, please take a moment to subscribe, like, and share. These aren't just buttons, they help us keep telling the stories that matter. Stories that reveal the truth. Stories that give voice to the silenced. Thank you for being here. But her real life was crumbling. She couldn't afford rent. Her relationships were shallow. She was isolated. That's when the lies got bolder. She started using public places as her home, posh hotel lobbies, model homes, or high-end Airbnbs she had no intention of staying in. She'd sneak in, snap photos, and leave. She started tagging brands she didn't own, Chanel, Dior, Prada, implying she had partnerships. She even photoshopped herself into famous locations, Santorini cliffs, Parisian cafes, Bali beach clubs. And people believed her. In just under a year, her follower count exploded from a few hundred to nearly 74,000. Brands, thinking she was legit, started sending her PR packages. Clothing, makeup, even invites to exclusive parties. Cassandra had created a monster, and it was working. But the higher she climbed, the more desperate she became to stay there. Behind the scenes, Cassandra was drowning. She was behind on bills. She was switching roommates every few months to dodge rent. And worse, she was borrowing money from friends under false pretenses. Her lies were spiderwebbing, and she was stuck in the center. And then came Ethan Vale. Ethan was everything Cassandra had ever posted about. Tall. Handsome. Charismatic. A successful entrepreneur in his early 30s who'd made his money in crypto and e-commerce. They met at a fashion launch party she had bluffed her way into. To him, Cassandra was a rising influencer, polished and radiant. And to her, Ethan was a jackpot. They began dating. But this wasn't a fairy tale. Ethan wasn't just wealthy, he was also controlling. He had secrets of his own. And his charm quickly morphed into manipulation. He monitored her posts. Questioned her messages. Made her delete male followers. He liked the version of Cassandra he thought he met, not the real her. And she knew, if he ever found out the truth, he would leave her. Maybe ruin her. So she kept up the act. Pushed harder. Faked more. And soon, Cassandra wasn't just lying to her followers, she was lying to Ethan. About her past. About her family. About everything. And then, there were the cracks. Her friend Jasmine, a real estate agent and one of the few people who'd known Cassandra before the Instagram fame, started noticing things. Inconsistencies. Cassandra claimed she'd just gotten back from Spain, but Jasmine saw her in LA the same week. Cassandra wore designer shoes, but Jasmine recognized them as knockoffs from a flea market. And once, when Cassandra claimed to be at an invite-only brunch in Malibu, Jasmine caught her hiding in a Starbucks bathroom, photoshopping her face into someone else's picture. "I'm building something," Cassandra whispered once. "I just need a little more time." But time was running out. Because soon, there would be blackmail. A betrayal. A panic that turned into rage. And a body that would never wake up. The perfect life was starting to rot from the inside. And Cassandra? She was about to make a choice that would change everything. It was the Sunday of Labor Day weekend in Los Angeles, a city humming with celebration, sun-drenched rooftops, overflowing brunch tables, the distant thump of poolside speakers echoing off apartment walls. While most of the city soaked in the long holiday, something darker was unraveling inside a sleek, luxury apartment in West Hollywood. At exactly 9:42 a.m., a 911 call came in. The voice on the other end was shaking, breathless, gasping between phrases like she couldn't catch her own thoughts, let alone her breath. The dispatcher could barely make out the words. "There's blood, he's not moving, please, please hurry." That voice belonged to Cassandra Hartwell. Responders rushed to the Veranda Heights apartments, an upscale complex where tenants paid thousands each month for a taste of exclusivity. Behind apartment 9B's floor-to-ceiling windows, behind the marble countertops and designer lighting, a nightmare had unfolded. The first thing police saw upon entry was blood. A streak, smeared along the edge of the kitchen island. A trail near the wine cooler. On the white marble floor lay the lifeless body of Ethan Vale. Face down. Unmoving. His skull cracked, the wound deep, ugly, and unmistakably deliberate. Scattered glass glimmered like ice across the floor, shards of a shattered crystal decanter. A toppled wine bottle. A broken phone screen. Furniture slightly askew, cushions displaced like someone had lunged or fallen or fought back. And sitting a few feet away, knees pulled to her chest, eyes wild and rimmed with smeared mascara, was Cassandra. She whispered the same phrase, over and over, almost as if trying to convince herself it was true. "It was an accident, we were arguing. I didn't mean to, but something didn't fit. Not the broken wine glass. Not the neatly wiped countertop. Not the fact that the building's doorman never saw Ethan leave." When Cassandra was taken in for questioning, her story was quick, practiced. She claimed Ethan came over late the night before. That they had wine. That an argument escalated. That she pushed him, and he hit his head on the counter. Just like that. But detectives weren't convinced. One of them, Detective Marisol King, had worked homicide for nearly 15 years. She'd heard every kind of denial, every half-truth draped in panic. And something in Cassandra's voice, it didn't carry grief. It carried calculation. Back at the scene, forensic investigators worked swiftly. There was no sign of forced entry. Ethan's wallet and watch were untouched. Cassandra's fingerprints were on the wine glass and the broken decanter. So were Ethan's. But something stood out, his prints were smudged, incomplete, like his hands had been trembling. Toxicology tests would later reveal why. Ethan had been drugged. Detectives found alprazolam in his system, commonly known as Xanax. Not enough to kill. But enough to disorient. Enough to slow reflexes. Enough to keep someone from defending themselves. And the timing? According to the coroner, he ingested it approximately 1 hour before death. Which led to one chilling question: if Ethan didn't bring the drugs, who did? When pressed, Cassandra claimed Ethan took pills recreationally. That he mixed them with wine sometimes. That he was erratic, unpredictable. But her narrative began to crumble when investigators checked Ethan's phone. The last messages between them were anything but hostile. In fact, they were flirtatious. At 6:53 p.m. the night before, Cassandra sent him a photo, lingerie, mirror selfie, soft lighting, with the caption, "Can't wait to see you." He replied, "On my way. Bring wine." She sent back, "Already opened." This wasn't a breakup. This wasn't fear. This wasn't a woman preparing for confrontation. This was seduction. Surveillance footage from the building confirmed the timeline. Ethan arrived around 7:30 p.m. He wasn't angry or aggressive. He buzzed in, smiled at the concierge, carried a bottle of red wine. From there, no one entered or exited Cassandra's unit until the next morning, nearly 14 hours later, when she made the 911 call. So what happened during those missing hours? Detectives dug deeper. They searched her apartment, then her social media. At first glance, she appeared successful, an influencer with nearly 400,000 followers, a self-proclaimed luxury coach, an advocate for female empowerment. But the deeper they went, the more the facade began to unravel. Her Instagram was a curated fantasy. Photos taken in Paris were traced back to stock image sites. Designer handbags. Confirmed fakes. Captions about attending exclusive parties. Fabricated. GPS data placed her in Pasadena the night she claimed to be in Morocco. The real Cassandra was broke. Her bank accounts showed thousands in credit card debt. Several purchases from knockoff clothing websites. She was months behind on rent. And the so-called brand deals she flaunted online. Nothing more than self-funded props and unpaid promises. But there was something more troubling. Venmo records revealed regular payments from an account tied to a woman named Maya Lennox. When investigators contacted Maya, she told them she had once been friends with Cassandra, briefly. They had discussed collaborations. But Cassandra had taken it too far. Packages went missing. PR gifts never arrived. Maya later found some of her own promotional items being sold on second-hand apps under an anonymous profile. She lied about everything, Maya told police. But she lied so beautifully, you wanted to believe her. Then came the autopsy report. Ethan Vale didn't just fall. He was hit, blunt force trauma to the back of the head. Defensive wounds on his arms. Fingernail bruises on his left forearm. He had tried to shield himself. And the sedative in his bloodstream proved one thing, he didn't stand a chance. But the final piece? That came from a neighbor. Rachel Bloom, who lived 2 floors down, told investigators she saw Cassandra at around 3:10 a.m., walking barefoot to the trash chute, carrying 2 large black bags. Rachel found it odd. Cassandra looked disheveled. Her hair wet. Her hands red. The bags were recovered from the building dumpster. Inside, a broken ring light. A blood-soaked towel. A smashed prepaid phone. And scraps of torn paper that, when pieced together, read. "I never meant for this to happen. I didn't know what else to do. I'll be okay. Eventually." On September 12, Cassandra Hartwell was arrested for second-degree murder. As she was led out of her apartment in handcuffs, the same cameras that once admired her filtered life now captured the raw, unedited truth. No makeup, no mask, just a woman cornered by her own deception. The media devoured the story. Headlines labeled her the Instagram illusionist. TikTok flooded with timelines and theories. Former fans turned critics overnight. And in the comments of her final post, "Still up, still haunting," someone wrote, "You faked everything. Even the love." The illusion had shattered. And now, there was only reality left. A dead man. A fabricated life. and a trial looming like a shadow ready to consume whatever remained of Cassandra Hartwell's carefully constructed world. As the investigation unfolded, and digital dust settled across Cassandra Hartwell's once idolized Instagram empire, law enforcement quietly closed in. What began as scattered doubts soon crystallized into a coordinated strike. 10 days after Ethan Vale's lifeless body was discovered, Cassandra was arrested without warning, just before sunrise, in the early morning calm that had once been her golden hour for content shoots. The handcuffs were cold and real. The police cruiser that carried her away was not the luxury SUV she often flaunted online. And the booking photo taken at Los Angeles County Jail revealed what the ring lights had always concealed: fatigue, fear, and a face no filter could save. Cassandra Hartwell, the face of luxury wellness, was now the name on a murder indictment. The charges were severe: second-degree murder, tampering with evidence, and providing false statements to law enforcement. Prosecutors were adamant, this wasn't just a crime of passion. It was a calculated act, the tragic climax to a life built on deception. As news of her arrest broke, the public response was electric. Social media turned into a battlefield. Her follower count plummeted as quickly as her mugshot trended. Supporters who once hailed her as a visionary began scrubbing old comments, distancing themselves from a narrative they no longer wanted to be part of. Inside the courtroom, the divide between fiction and reality grew sharper. The Cassandra who once sold dreams in video clips now sat in silence beneath sterile fluorescent lights. She looked smaller, diminished, not just by her prison attire, but by the collapse of the image she had fought so hard to build. The trial became a media event in itself. Not simply because of the crime, but because of the character. Cassandra wasn't just on trial for Ethan Vale's death. She was on trial for every lie wrapped in pastel aesthetics and motivational captions. Every faked trip, every photoshopped receipt, every illusion that people had bought into. The prosecution's strategy was methodical. They dissected Cassandra's double life with clinical precision. Her financial collapse. Her desperate attempts to maintain appearances. The months of manipulation leading up to Ethan's death. Every fake post became a breadcrumb leading toward motive. Every deleted message was now evidence of intent. Digital forensics confirmed their worst suspicions. The timeline showed that Cassandra had staged multiple posts during the days surrounding Ethan's death. While she claimed to be in Milan for a luxury brand collaboration, she had in fact never left her apartment. The matching bath tiles in a photo she posted on day 3 of her alleged trip became the linchpin that placed her at the scene longer than she claimed. The evidence mounted. Traces of a sedative were found in Ethan's bloodstream. A bottle of crushed alprazolam was recovered from Cassandra's bathroom cabinet. Surveillance footage showed Ethan entering her apartment the night he died, but never leaving. The defense pushed back. They crafted a portrait of a frightened, isolated woman who had spiraled out of control. They argued that Cassandra and Ethan had a volatile, codependent relationship, one that blurred the lines between love, obsession, and desperation. They painted Ethan as emotionally unstable, suggesting that the altercation might have escalated unexpectedly. But the prosecution struck deeper. They presented psychological profiles, outlining Cassandra's pathological need to control perception. To maintain dominance over her image. To never appear vulnerable, even when she was unraveling. Cassandra's internet history added another haunting layer. Dozens of searches on how sedatives metabolize in the bloodstream, cleaning agents that obscure crime scene evidence, and articles about self-defense laws in California. As the trial progressed, the courtroom became a war zone of public fascination. Content creators camped outside the courthouse, live streaming updates and offering analysis to their followers. Journalists scrambled to be first with any new detail. True crime podcasts released daily breakdowns, some sympathetic, others scathing. For Cassandra, there was no such thing as a private moment anymore. Even the smallest gestures, how she blinked, how she held her hands, were captured, dissected, and judged by millions. And yet, despite the tidal wave of public opinion, the legal battle raged on with precision. Cassandra's legal team fought to suppress certain pieces of evidence, to question the chain of custody of forensic material, to introduce reasonable doubt wherever it could find footing. But the momentum was against them. The state's case, built not just on evidence but on context, on who Cassandra was and what she had become, proved nearly unshakable. And then came the verdict. After 4 days of deliberation, the jury returned with a chilling finality. Guilty. Second-degree murder. Tampering with evidence. Providing false statements. The sentencing was swift. 25 years to life in a California correctional facility. Cassandra showed no reaction as the sentence was read. The woman who once lived for the camera now looked past it, unblinking, her world reduced to concrete walls and correctional timetables. And just like that, the empire crumbled. The brand deals disappeared. The followers fled. The silence that followed wasn't just the absence of posts, it was the collapse of an identity. Not just Cassandra's, but of a generation's infatuation with illusion. Please take a moment to subscribe, like, and share. The trial of Cassandra Hartwell began on a gray October morning, almost a year to the day after Ethan Vale's death. Outside the courthouse, a line had already formed. Not of grieving families or quiet observers, but of curious spectators, influencers, YouTubers, and self-declared digital sleuths. Some came with notepads, others with smartphones and microphones. All came for the same reason, to witness the unraveling of a spectacle that had once been a fantasy. Inside the courtroom, the tension was suffocating. Cassandra entered flanked by sheriff's deputies, dressed in a muted gray suit, her hair tied tightly back. The glamour was gone. No eyeliner. No highlighter. No filters. Just the weight of reality pressing down on a woman who had spent years bending it. The prosecution opened with force. They told the jury this wasn't a random act of violence, but the crescendo of a carefully constructed illusion. Cassandra Hartwell, they said, was addicted to control. Of her narrative, of her image, and ultimately, of the man who loved her. They walked the jury through a timeline as chilling as it was meticulous. From the moment Ethan Vale entered her apartment, to the digital cover-ups that followed. They presented search histories, drug interactions, evidence contamination techniques, even articles about influencer scandals and how to disappear online. Photos were shown. The same room Ethan died in, staged days later for a sponsored skincare post. The couch, the throw pillows, the lighting, identical. The product caption read, "Where I unwind and reset. Peace is a luxury worth claiming." Peace. The irony landed heavy. The defense countered with a plea for empathy. Cassandra, they said, had spiraled. She was not a killer, but a woman cornered by pressure, abandonment, and the impending collapse of her entire identity. They spoke of the toxic side of influencer culture. The addiction to validation. The pressure to perform for strangers. They framed Ethan's death not as murder, but as a tragic accident fueled by mutual dysfunction and emotional instability. But then came the testimonies. First, Ethan's best friend, Marcus Heller, who recounted late-night calls filled with confusion and concern. Ethan had been pulling away from Cassandra, he said. He'd grown suspicious, heartbroken, and increasingly afraid of how tightly she tried to control everything around her, including him. Then came forensic analysts, detailing the sedative in Ethan's blood. Alprazolam. Enough to cause confusion, drowsiness, and slowed breathing. Traces were found in his wine glass. The same glass that had been polished clean before authorities arrived. But the most devastating blow came from a single USB drive. On it was a video, recovered from Cassandra's cloud storage but never posted publicly. It was a practice clip, something she had filmed hours after Ethan's death. In the video, she appeared composed, rehearsing a product ad about a relaxation tea. The backdrop? The very room where his body had been found. The jury watched it in silence. The courtroom chilled. And in that moment, something shifted. The prosecution didn't need to say more. The jury had seen behind the mask. The defense called a few of Cassandra's former colleagues, social media managers, content editors, even a therapist. They described a woman living on the edge, a digital goddess built on a cracked foundation. One therapist testified that Cassandra exhibited signs of narcissistic personality disorder, anxiety, and compulsive identity fabrication. She had lost the ability to distinguish between the life she lived and the one she created. But even those revelations only deepened the tragedy. When Cassandra herself took the stand, her voice was low and controlled. She didn't cry. She didn't break. She explained her love for Ethan, how he had been her anchor, how their relationship had been messy but passionate. She described the night of his death as a blur of emotion and confusion, never admitting guilt, but never denying her actions either. Her words were more confusing than clarifying. Carefully chosen. Almost too careful. And when the time came for final arguments, the prosecution didn't rely on outrage. They relied on reality. They reminded the jury that image could be manipulated, but facts could not. That Ethan Vale was dead. That Cassandra Hartwell had built a life on lies, and when that life cracked, she silenced the one person who knew the truth. The jury deliberated for 4 days. Outside, the crowds grew louder. Debates raged on social media. Some still clung to Cassandra's innocence, painting her as a victim of pressure, misogyny, and cancel culture. Others believed she had orchestrated a digital fairy tale with a deadly final chapter. When the jury returned, every camera lens pointed toward the courtroom. Guilty. Second-degree murder. Tampering with evidence. Providing false statements to law enforcement. The sentence was handed down 2 weeks later, 25 years to life in a California state prison. The courtroom was still. No outburst. No weeping. Just silence. Ethan's mother, seated in the front row, closed her eyes. No relief. No victory. Just grief. Cassandra showed no visible reaction. She stood as the sentence was read, her hands clasped tightly in front of her, her eyes fixed on a point far beyond the judge's bench. For the first time in years, there were no likes. No comments. Just consequences. Outside the courthouse, the crowds began to disperse. The headlines faded. The hashtags grew quiet. But the story left a scar. Not just on those who knew Ethan. Not just on Cassandra's shattered legacy. But on a culture so quick to believe in beauty, in luxury, in curated lies. It was a story that exposed the hollow core beneath the filtered surface. A cautionary tale in pixels and pain. And in the end, all that remained was the truth. Cold. Final. And no longer for sale. If this story moved you, if it made you pause and think about the world behind the filters, please take a moment to subscribe, like, and share. These aren't just buttons, they help us keep telling the stories that matter. Stories that reveal the truth. Stories that give voice to the silenced. Thank you for watching.